You're listening to a DM podcast.
We would like to acknowledge and give thanks to the traditional owners of the land we record this podcast on, the Yagara and Turrbal people,
and their continued connection to the land and waterways on which we meet. Hello and welcome to Sportish, where sport and pop culture collide. I'm just going with that now because we can't decide on anything else. Hello and welcome, Georgie Trickett.
Hello, Libby Trickett. Where are you podcasting from this fine day?
Well, I'm in Melbourne this week. Well, the next 2 weeks, actually. I mean, you know all of this information, but like last week was ridiculous.
It really was. It was the stupidest way to end term 4 for any poor soul I could ever imagine.
Just for anybody. Like, why did we do it that way? But anyway, I was in Sydney for 2 days, of which I podcasted from. And then I came home for a day and emceed an amazing event, which we'll talk about.
Oh, I can't wait.
It's sport related. Thursday night, I flew to Townsville, slept in Townsville for about 6 hours, drove to Ingham for my grandmother's funeral and, you know, had the bacon, saw all my lovely family and all of that sort of stuff. And then drove back to Townsville and then flew from Townsville back to Brisbane by 11 p.m. I think I got back into my house and then I had to pack.
You decided to then, instead of flying to Melbourne, to drive from Brisbane to Melbourne with 4 children while pregnant.
And 2 dogs. Don't forget the dogs, Georgie.
Oh my God. This is
We've
just
got
like
the dogs.
A horror story. What is wrong with you?
Also, to be fair to me, it wasn't my idea. It was my husband's idea.
Oh, I mean, I 100% know that this is not your idea. I looked at this itinerary and I was like, Libby would not do this to herself because she'd understand like the torture.
Limits.
That is driving.
Boundaries. I don't know. Just what is a good idea. Also, like, I have a much better concept around like time management. And Luke's like, oh yeah, if we leave at 7 on Saturday morning, we'll get to Sydney by 7 p.m. We got to Sydney by like, I think we got in at 10:30, 11 to Sydney. And then we drove from about 8:30 in the morning on Sunday and we got in at 12:15 Sunday night.
Yuck. And can I say, at some point in the family group chat, there was a photo that was sent where Luke's like, oh, and this is us visiting a fountain, not a waterfall, a fountain, like a concrete fountain in Mossman. And I was like, is Alfie climbing into that fountain? And as the series of photos tick through, Alfie's then in like his swimming onesie. And I was like, okay, well, babies swim. And then the older girls are all pictured jumping into the fountain.
Yeah.
So, wow.
I said to Luke, it's so funny because like I know that I'm a loose parent. Like I know that. I'm conscious of that. But there's something very humbling about being in Mossman in Sydney, like one of the fanciest suburbs in Australia's biggest, richest city.
And there are the filthy Tricketts having a bath.
The Bogans from Brisbane.
I did say to my family that if there's ever a body of water that the Tricketts see, they just assume they can swim in it. Like it's
just what it is. We're hopping in. And it didn't happen all at once. Like they just sort of sneak in there, like one arm, they have a little bit of a splash and then they dip a foot and then they're like, ooh, who can get in more?
What did the good people of Mossman think?
Well, we had a lot of looks and we get a lot of looks anyway because like we're a family of 4 kids, right? Like a lot of people look anyway. So, you know, that's normal. However, there was one lovely woman with her daughter, 2-year-old daughter, Charlotte, who saw Alfie in the fountain and she decided that she wanted to join in. And this lovely woman from Mossman let her daughter jump in the fountain with the Bokens. And I have to say, that made me feel so loved and welcomed to what is a very fancy suburb.
So the message is here, sporties, should you see a fountain on these hot summer days in Australia, jump right in. That's what Libby Trickett would do.
Just go for it. The worst part was once we all got out, I saw a few dogs then frolicking in the fountain. I'm like, yeah, don't think too hard about what's been in that thing.
I am so keen to hear about your week last week. What happened on Thursday?
No, you need to tell me about yours first because yours happened on Tuesday. So we'll go.
Well, yeah, and we sort of spoke about it a little bit last week on the pod, and I told you some of the beautiful stories of the junior sporties that we read out. And as discussed, I think Emma McKeon just loved hearing those anecdotes. She is such a contained, content human. Like, what I really loved about her and in meeting her was that she's totally unfazed. She'd had a very big day because she'd only just announced the day before that she was retiring. So she was in the throes of media interview after media interview, and she came in to this event where I was interviewing her, and it's a big room and it's a big occasion, and she just sort of like was able to center herself, which is undoubtedly her superpower in a racing environment. And it was really interesting. During the interview, we'd be talking about, you know, the soft stuff that sits around swimming. And she was lovely and conversational. And then if we touched on swimming aspects and the technicality around swimming, it was like she slipped into another gear. And all of a sudden, well, now we're talking about swimming and this is how it operates. Like, her ability to compartmentalize like that is quite incredible. And to watch it in action,
Yeah,
was just brilliant.
she's so cool.
She's so cool. It was hilarious. I was talking about missing out on the London Olympics by, I don't know, by a tenth of a second. And I was like, you know, what a crushing experience to have been that close to have not made your first Olympics. How did that make you feel? And she was like, well, I should point out that the person who was one in front of me who made it instead of me was Libby Trickett. I was like, no.
Did not know that.
Know that.
I didn't know that. Oh, I'm sorry, Emma.
I mean, she knows that. She remembers Libby.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the sort of stuff you remember though, right? Like, I know who beat me to the wall a number of times.
She was beautiful about it. Like, it was so funny. And she has this amazing ability to find the humor in what we're talking about. And I also asked her, how do we definitely know she was retired? Because retirement is something she's actually contemplated since the age of 15. She's actually stepped away from the sport many times and has always been willing to step away from it, which I found really interesting. And she said, oh no, I've definitely left the sport because the drug testing agencies no longer know where I am at all times. And the audience was like, what do you mean? And we sort of had to explain to them how you're tracked to every hour of your day and you have to give an hour of each day and tell the drug testers where you are. And so for her, that was her like, oh no, I'm definitely finished because I haven't been updating my schedule, so they don't know where I am.
Yeah, she would have actively withdrawn from the list. They'd talk about being on the whereabouts list, and you have to submit some papers, sign some documents, and then you're off it. And then you don't have to tell everyone where you're going to be. You don't have to make yourself available to wee in front of anybody anymore. It's delightful.
What a life-changing moment to not have to urinate in the company of others.
It is quite a reward at the end.
I need to segue into cricket. The day I interviewed Emma was the day before Phillip Hughes' memorial, or his 10-year anniversary of his passing.
It's been 10 years.
10 years. For those of you who haven't followed cricket closely, Phillip Hughes was an amazing Australian batsman who had played a number of incredible tests for Australia and was largely seen to be our next great opener in the men's Australian team. And 10 years ago, he was devastatingly killed due to a ball that just hit him in the wrong place and caused an aneurysm. It was just such an incredibly tragic time. And I was at the SCG the day before the memorial, and I was watching New South Wales play Tasmania the day before. And the next day they had a memorial on the pitch, and they had a moment to remember him. And players who were part of that game on the day that he died were also on the field for that 1 minute silence last week. I feel so lucky to have just been able to sit in that stadium for a moment and think about him. It's understood that the reason the Australian team is at a bit of a loss at the moment with its opening batting lineup is partly because we lost his talent at a really critical point. And we're now seeing that 10 years later, not having had a Phillip Hughes come through the ranks. And if anyone wants to, I guess, deep dive into that or go back and understand a bit more about what happened, there is the most incredible interview on ABC Sport Daily between Patrick Stack and a cricket journalist who was there on the day and is really close to the cricket community, and just her perspective on it was really beautiful, not just for the impact it had on the cricketers as players, but on all the people that knew him and were associated with him. And she described so beautifully how Phillip was always described as everyone's good mate because he had this ability to make everyone feel like they were a good mate of his, and they all felt that connection to him. And I just think it's just a beautiful reminder of how powerful people can be in sport, and it's worth going back and listening to and understanding a bit more about his legacy.
Obviously, it's been well documented that I'm not a huge fan of cricket, but I do remember 10 years ago hearing about Phillip and hearing just the devastating, random, unexpected accident that happened, and really it probably took me a couple of weeks to kind of like grapple with that, because it was so unexpected, right? And it's something that everyone all around Australia plays cricket at some point, whether it's just in your backyard or for Australia. And, you know, just how fleeting life is. And I remember even, 10 years ago, just hearing how well loved he was. And, he was so young. What was he, 26 maybe?
Yeah, he was really young.
Like so young. And you go, what sort of impact do you want to have on the world? And like, if I can leave this world with even half of the impact that Phillip had on his community at such a young age, like, oh, that's a life well lived. But yeah, absolutely devastating. And it's so beautiful that you were able to kind of celebrate him 10 years on, George.
Yeah, it was nice to just sit in that really beautiful stadium and think of what an incredible player he was. Now I want to hear all about your Thursday. Go.
Yes. So it was so funny because, last week was such a schmozzle. And I don't know if you ever get like this, George, but I said yes to this event months before. The way that I work is not consistent work. It is like dabble, and then have to go full in. And I was waiting for that moment to come for this event because it's something that I'm super excited about. But it got so overwhelming with everything else that was going on at the time that I really didn't have a moment to get excited as much as I had wanted to. So the event was for the Australian Olympic Committee, and I was asked to be MC for this alumni event, basically to help athletes who may be thinking about retirement or maybe have just retired from their Olympic sport. And it's the first time, it was a series of events, and they held them in Melbourne and Sydney and Perth and Brisbane. It's the first time that these events have been held ever to help these athletes who are going through this decision-making process or have, are transitioning themselves. And like, to think that 13 years ago when I retired, like there would be something available like this is just beyond anything. Like it just wouldn't have happened. It never did happen. Yeah, it was funny because like I had maybe 2 hours to prepare for it in the morning before, because life, and that's fine. But it was in that kind of 2 hours that I really just was floored with the opportunity that you could help these athletes in that moment, because it's something that I've spoken about at length. I've had a podcast about it, thoroughly explored my own experiences with transition into life after sport and what an impact that is, and how hard it can be, how wonderful, yes, it can be as well with the different opportunities, but certainly kind of breaking down and processing all of the ins and outs of your sport. And I got to interview retired athletes. So, athletes who have, been long on the transition journey. So Naomi McCarthy, who is an incredible gold medalist water polo player from Sydney, Andrew Tram, who is a canoe sprinter and medalist, went to 3 Olympic Games, Toby Jenkins, who is also a water polo player in 2004. And, these people, they're obviously very retired, but they have gone on to forge incredibly successful, really impactful careers post their sport. And then I got to interview, Mitch Larkin and Carly McCulloch, who, are just only kind of recently retired. I think Carly's maybe 3 years retired and Mitch is like 6 months retired. And, both still kind of navigating. Like, I feel like Mitch was definitely still navigating life after sport and still processing some stuff. And he was...
Which is totally natural, right? Because you go from this highly structured routine environment to holidays all the time.
Yeah. And having to create your own structure, right?
Yeah. And also everyone saying, what are you doing now? Which is so annoying. It's like when you're in high school and everyone says, what do you want to be? And you're like, I don't know, because I'm 17.
I felt like I had to really keep weaving that in because, like, as I said, I'm 13 years retired and I still feel like I'm transitioning. I still feel like there's things that I'm working through and I'm still working out what I want to be when I grow up. And I certainly feel like that is the same for Mitch, where he's at. But, he's working in funds management, he's working kind of a corporate role. And, that itself brings its own challenges because it's like you're working and sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day. And I don't want to be mean, but like, when you come from like a really high performance environment and you go out into the real world and you realize that there are a lot of people who just don't give a shit about achieving or setting goals, or they like, he had a couple of anecdotes around people who were just like, yeah, a successful week is if we stay on top of our email inbox and, we're not getting kind of hassled for anything. And then you have someone like Carly McCulloch who, is a bronze medalist at the Olympics. She's a cyclist. She liked to describe herself as a change maker because she is one of like a minuscule percent of female coaches around the world. And she wants to go and be successful. And, she has such huge aspirations and goals still within sport, obviously. It's just she's not the athlete anymore. She's getting to coach them and she's doing just the most remarkable job. And I cannot wait to see her kind of grow and thrive because she's only 3 years retired. So
wow.
And already has these big aspirations, which I just think is so bloody cool. And then the third panel that I got to interview was all industry experts and sort of understanding what from, the corporate world, people are looking for, what, will make an impact, really kind of practical stuff. So what corporate people are looking for on CVs. And like that might sound really basic to our sporties listening who haven't kind of been through this journey. But that is something that is really difficult to navigate, especially when you're like, I have been an athlete for 10 to 15 years of my life and I haven't really got a degree behind me. I haven't had any work experience necessarily because there are a lot of athletes, including myself, who have been in that position. And so how do you showcase what your skills are and how they could apply to these job sets? And yeah, it was really cool. And the coolest part, I think, for me, because when I retired, and because it's all about me, obviously, but like when I retired, it felt like you're kind of cast out.
Yes.
And
you're out of the club.
Yeah, you're out of the club. And, I didn't know how to kind of navigate that stuff. And it felt like I was doing it all on my own.
Yeah.
Whereas the people who went to these events, and by all accounts, they were all very different, but, along the same lines, but they really helped connect the athletes to the Olympic movement still. And they really kind of tried to push and, drive home the idea that there's this whole network that want to support you and want to help you or want to lift you up. Because I think when you do initially retire, it feels like you have to completely make things up and you have no idea where to go. But I really hope we can see these athletes feel really welcomed and really connected with that group and feel just a little less alone in, that transition.
When you're an Olympian, do you have like an alumni? Like, do you step out of your Olympicness?
Dan Kowalski, who has been working with the Australian Olympic Committee for a number of years now, his role has been really driving this kind of well-being of the athletes and particularly in that transition phase. And I haven't seen anything like this until he's come along and is really trying to drive that change and really kind of reconnect athletes. And, I know that Tom King from the Queensland portion of the Olympic Committee has been really driving that as well, because often all of those kind of post-Olympic events felt like they were all just really old people. It sounds terrible. It sounds really mean, but it just felt like it was all the old alumni and it wasn't really attracting the younger generations. And, I know for a fact, Tom's been beautiful because he's constantly reaching out to me to kind of bring me along to these events. He's like, I'm going to keep trying because, eventually I'll get you there.
You struggle to say no.
Yeah, I just ignore people. And I said that to him. I'm like, oh, Tom, I'm so sorry. There's so many messages and so many phone calls that I've just ignored. And thank you for keeping on trying because I really appreciate it. And he's exactly the person who needs to be in charge of that because, really connecting with those athletes to bring them back in. And, and they just kept talking about networking, which Georgie is like your superpower.
Yeah, but I also hate that word because I think it gives this vibe of people standing around with a glass of wine, surface level conversations. And I get it. That's just so uninteresting to me on so many levels. But genuinely connecting with people and working out how you can connect them to this person and how you can bring them into that group and how you can create a network is the stuff I find really interesting because
but I think people think of networking as it's transactional. So what can I get from you? Yeah. Whereas the way that you do it is like you're trying to help and support and lift people and like connect them without necessarily any gains for yourself.
No, exactly. I guess that's community, right?
Who knew? Who knew, Georgie? And that's how I felt at the end of this event. It was like, I need to connect with these people because like they get it. They understand how out of your comfort zone you are constantly, especially through this kind of phase. And, some have done it brilliantly and just know what they want to go into and some are still kind of drifting a little bit and still working it out, but we're all kind of in it together and supporting each other through it.
And I think when you're with other people who you can call and go, my day was terrible, like who are your colleagues in this journey? Like that's really who's your cohort, who's your class that you move through and you need that. It's so good to find those people who you can go, hey, my day was awful. Can I just tell you about it? And there's at a point in time, wherever you are, there's like this set group of people who you can talk to about that sort of stuff. And they may only be for a season and that's fine. But it's so important to have those connection points because otherwise you do feel like you're this little island.
Yeah, doing it by yourself. And it's just not the case. And I think our societies are set up, like regardless of whether you're an Olympian or not. Like
this
I
is
think
so not sport by this point.
No, I know. This whole episode is probably
gone deep.
It's like if you can find your group of people who can support you and help you navigate things, like that's what it's about, right?
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Sportish. We love having you as part of our community. Feel free to jump into our DMs on Instagram at Being Sportish or email us. All those details are on our Instagram or in the show notes. Show notes are very handy.
I mean, you look at them all the time because you write them.
I write them. Libby might not know where the show notes are nor how to access them.
But you just scroll down. I've heard. That you just scroll down.
Infinitely accessible. And I'll put a link to that amazing interview about Phillip Hughes because I think it's just a lovely touch point.
And Georgie, because, school holidays are upon us and, life is just wild, we thought we'd just change things up for next week and have a listener question week. What do you reckon?
I love it.
Yeah.
I'd love to get some emails in from our sporties that we can answer. I have got one or two already that I think could almost be their own episode. So we might drop them into the feed during summer because we would like to declare that we will take some time off.
Yes, we will be taking time off.
Because otherwise we just go a little bit crazy during this 7 or 8 week never-ending block of holidays, which we love,
many weeks.
also simultaneously dislike. But we will still be in your ears. We are going to put together some episodes which we think you'll love and with some people that we're really excited to talk about.
All right. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.